Well, it's been almost exactly 2 years, and finally, the pandemic is dissipating. We made our choices, we learned our lessons, and it's a new dawn. And it's a new season for the year 2022, and a new time for all of us to embrace new life, new opportunities, new abundance. And while we balance our care and genuine prayer for peace and the awareness of a world that still includes unthinkable tragedy and sorrow and even war, we also are grateful for how blessed we are. And so let us use this spring of 2022 to take everything that we've learned, clear the past, and move forward in gratitude for the freedom that we have, for the blessings of our lives, for the opportunity to come together again in community, online, and yes, in person. We are all part of the awakening world, and we all have the roles that we're playing as individuals and collectively. We are the imaginal cells finding each other to create a beautiful, incredible butterfly out of the old paradigm. So welcome to spring of 2022. Welcome to the awakening world.
We come from the same source, a powerful love force. We're coming together, stronger than ever, not divided. We come from the same source, a powerful love force. We're coming together, hear the call, you are invited. We come from the same source, a powerful love force.
Welcome everybody. I'm Love Coach Scott Catamas, and we are doing a very special little empathy webinar today. A lot of people have called me the master of empathy, and other people say that. I want to say we're all students, I think, until the day we die. And we're always learning, and I'm certainly always learning and growing. But I have been studying relationship my entire life, and have had some amazing teachers. I was blessed to travel and teach with Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication. I've studied with Tony Robbins and a lot of the kind of your major leading teachers of compassionate communication and relationship in general. And so this is going to be a fairly short little webinar. I am going to answer some questions. And I see some of my friends in the Zoom room: Tammy, Ray, Ducky, Josie Ann, Leora. Each and every one of you is special to me, so thanks for being with us. And definitely pop in the chat box any thoughts, questions that you have. And likewise, I'm going to be periodically looking down at, this is where my friends on Unify are coming in. And I see Tracy and Paul and Michael, Ronald. So any questions you might have about how we can give and receive empathy, especially in complicated relationships. You know, one of the things that I always like to lead with when I'm talking about empathy is that almost all of our great spiritual teachers that have lasted a long time taught compassion. They taught empathy. Obviously Jesus, but also Rumi, the Buddha of compassion, Prince Siddhartha, who became the Buddha of compassion, the Dalai Lama, Martin Luther King, even John Lennon. You know, the people that last, that's what their great teaching was compassion. And I want to give a few examples of our great teachers demonstrating profound compassion. We'll start with Jesus. Many of us were raised in the Christian tradition. And if, the story, and again, none of us know what did or didn't happen, but the idea that there's Jesus on the cross suffering, and crucifixion is a horrific way to die, really horrific. And among his last words, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Profound compassion. When Prince Siddhartha set off on his journey as a young man to figure out how he wanted to end all the suffering of the world, and he finally collapses under the banyan tree, and he becomes the Buddha of compassion when the enlightenment comes, and the enlightenment comes when he accepts there is suffering, and he becomes the Buddha of compassion. The best-selling poet in America for the last several years is the poet Rumi, a 12th century Islamic mystic who was probably gay. Best-selling poet in America. And he talks very much, a lot of his poetry is the pathway of the broken heart. When our hearts break, we don't contract and go into our cage, but or our shell, we open our broken heart and we experience life even more fully. And then finally, a personal story, and then I see that Shai is here, so I'll bring Shai on. Most of you know that about 10 years ago, my wife died in my arms. And obviously it was heartbreaking to lose my wife in that way. And she was young, 52, which for me is very young. But as my heart broke open, I also, at the same time that she literally took her last breath, I simultaneously burst into tears because she was gone. But the tears were half mourning for myself and that she was gone, and also because I was so connected to her, half glorious because I could feel her liberation. And that taught me that when we allow ourselves to fully open our hearts, miracles happen. I've coached about 1,000 couples, and what I've learned a lot, but what I've learned that I want to express is that everyone wants to be loved and cared for. And so when I'm working with a couple or a family or even a polyamorous configuration or constellation, and inevitably they've come to me because they're hurting. People are hurting. Things have happened and their needs haven't been met. Their values haven't been met. They're hurting. And they've put up walls. And maybe they're projecting onto the others certain things about them. What I try to do is help people remember the love. I don't dive right into, well, what did Joe do? Oh, so Sally had the affair. No. I asked Joe and Sally to remember moments where they felt really well loved, really well cared for by the other. We have to always remember the love. And if you are having pain in this moment about anybody in your life, to the degree you're missing love from that person, love that you once shared, or love that you long for, that's in direct proportion to the pain that you're in. It's almost like a mathematical formula that the pain we feel in our emotional body, in our relationships when they take a turn, the pain we feel is in direct proportion, exact equal, to the love we're seeking, the love we're longing for, or the love we once had that we're not experiencing. So, thank you, Leora. I'm going to bring Shai Fishman on. This actually all started because I'm going to be doing a workshop for Shai, and Shai, you're on camera now. He is the creator of Leveled Up Love, and he was supposed to be here to interview me, and he had a little technical snag. So, hello, Shai, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me, and I can have you, and we can host each other and just have a cool conversation.
Yeah. So, are there any questions you'd like to start with? Or I can see if there's questions from our Zoom room or from Unify. But do you have a question you'd like to start with?
Well, first, I'm excited to have you join our community and come teach about empathy and specifically in polyamorous relationships. I know you teach empathy in all relationships, but specifically for our group, we have a lot of people that are struggling. I'd love to know what those that will attend who are polyamorous and looking for support, what should they expect from that workshop?
Yeah, so for everybody who's watching, just what he's referencing is this is the workshop I'm going to be teaching. And if you're interested in attending, it's this Saturday at 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Mastering empathy in poly relationships, shifting from the reptile brain into frontal lobe responsiveness. And so let me talk a little bit about that. Because the main thing I will be teaching is how we can understand our reptile brain and when we go into reaction, and how to pull from reptile brain reactivity and move into the frontal and temporal lobe where we can respond. So let me talk about that for a moment. When a child is conceived, any of us who's watching and listening to me right now, when we're conceived, in our first 24 hours after our father's sperm successfully fertilizes our mother's egg, we begin our embryonic journey, and the very first thing that is formed is what becomes the reptile brain. The reptile brain begins, there's a cellular membrane, our spinal cord begins to grow, and the body grows around it. Point being that the oldest part of our body is what becomes the reptile brain, which ends up about the size of a walnut in the back part of the brain. It's also the most ancient part of our being from an anthropological standpoint. Now, why am I talking about this? Because we all have this reptile brain that our ancestors have had going way, way, way back. And you know what? It was a good thing because it kept our ancestors alive long enough so they could procreate and continue the race. What does the reptile brain do? The moment we perceive the possibility of attack, not attack itself, but the possibility of attack, that reptile brain goes off. Here's my little reptile brain. It goes off. And we go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Our brain is programmed. Possibility of attack, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawn is basically ass kissing. It's when the big dog surrenders to the little dog and exposes its attack. It says, okay, you can kill me. Please don't. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's what's ingrained in our brain. Now, our ancestors primarily had to live in reptile brain reactivity because they were constantly facing danger. And so they were in a constant state of survival. People that suffer from PTSD or grew up in an unsafe home where they are consistently vigilant, also, they spend much more time in reaction. However, the movement of the human species is from surviving to thriving. Most of us who are watching this, we're blessed. Most of us have not been in physical survival. Most of us have not fought in wars. And so to the degree that we haven't faced physical survival too often, or that our ancestral lineage is further removed, is the more that we automatically start showing up in the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is where the empathy center of the brain is and the observer part of the brain is. So now I've talked about our ancestors who were in constant survival, and that's where we're coming from. And God bless our ancestors. God bless what they went through to give us the freedom, the incredible freedom that we have today. But where we're going is thriving. The Dalai Lama allowed people to hook electrodes up to his brain, and they tracked how his brain functions. And what they discovered after 90 minutes of research was that his synapses were entirely firing up here, never back here. So the lead researcher decided to test him and showed him photographs of Chinese soldiers burning down a Tibetan temple. Shows him the photos. Come on, what are you feeling? What are you really thinking when you look at those photos? As the Dalai Lama looked at the photos, he wept. He didn't stuff his emotions, he cried. But his synapses continued to fire up here. The lead researcher took one last shot at it, if you want to use that expression. He said, come on, how do you feel when you think about the fact that clearly Chinese soldiers are raping Tibetan women, perhaps even murdering your people? How do you really feel? Synapses continued to fire up here. The Dalai Lama got very silent, went into kind of a meditative place, came out and said, it reminds me that I must pray equally for the Chinese soldiers as I do for my Tibetan people. This is what I will be teaching on Saturday and any time I'm teaching empathy. How do we do that? How do we do that when somebody has said something to us that really hurts? Or we're in a scene and we're scared going into the empathy scene, oh my God, the person I love is in love with someone else, or having sex with somebody else, or wanting to have sex with somebody else. Totally activating our animal body. Our reptile brain and our animal body gets really stimulated with stuff like that. You know, a lifetime or two ago, we killed each other over stuff like that. And now we're trying to practice compersion. Compersion is the ability to be in the frontal lobe and to take joy in the pleasure of someone we care about, even when we're completely disconnected from it. We're connected out of our care for that person, but we're not actually playing. It's kind of like a mother watching her 5-year-old play, and she's taking joy seeing how happy the 5-year-old is playing with his little toys, right? So in empathy, we learn what are our triggers. What's the kryptonite? What are the things in my life that I'm vulnerable to? You know, even Superman had kryptonite. What's kryptonite? Pieces of his own home planet. Same thing for us. Most of the time, whatever our wounding was as a child, we carry in. If you had a father that was violent and verbally abusive and loud, then loud, aggressive behavior, you automatically are going to go into reptile brain. If you had a parent that was neglectful or didn't really care for you the way you needed, then you can quickly go into abandonment stories or rejection stories. Now, none of these things are bad or wrong. They're part of our human condition. They're what we're here to learn. I believe we're here to learn to love, starting with ourselves. So these tools are about recognizing, okay, what's my history? What are my veils of past pain that come down and get in the way of my ability to see things clearly or to see this other person clearly? I'll bring Shai back on for a moment. So, you know, for example, let's say Shai and I haven't had much contact, and the last time we did something hard happened. And I'm in a good mood, and then all of a sudden Shai shows up. My reptile brain takes over because I don't see Shai as a beautiful, wonderful human being. My reptile brain remembers him as an enemy, as someone to be feared. Because the last time we interacted, I'm making this up by the way, Shai and I are good. But if the last time we interacted or a previous time we interacted, we fought, or I felt threatened, I felt judged or criticized or shamed by him, then my reptile brain sees him and associates him as an enemy. And this is how we can go from really deeply loving someone to seeing them as an enemy, because it's our brain actually protecting us. One interesting example, let's say we've got a husband and a wife, and overall they've got a good relationship. But the last time they had a big fight, she was wearing a red blouse. 3 months later, since that fight happened, she comes downstairs into the kitchen and she's wearing that red blouse again. First time she's worn it since then. Her husband looks up, sees her, but sees the red blouse unconsciously. His brain might automatically associate the red blouse with fighting with her, and he might look up and say, "What is it now?" She's in neutral. She's like, "Nothing. What's wrong with you?" "I know that face. I know that face. I don't want to fight with you. I don't want to fight with you either." And now they're in a fight, right? And you know what happened? It was his unconscious reptile brain just remembering that red blouse and sending that message of danger, danger. So we have to learn, what are the red blouses in our life? What are the people or the situations where we're vulnerable? And when it comes to polyamory, we are very vulnerable. When it comes to multiple love, sex with other people, people we love having sex or wanting to have sex with other people, this triggers some of our hardest stuff. So, Shai, I'll turn it back over to you for any thoughts or questions.
Wow. Wow. That was incredible. That was an incredible um, perspective that is, it seems like attachment theory and what you shared, everything is intertwined.
Yeah.
Love the analogy of kryptonite. If I can be a bit vulnerable, I can share that. And I've shared this before with our community that, you know, when I and prior partners, but specifically my current partner, Leah, when she got upset, I, I did not tap into empathy. I was just upset that she was upset. I didn't understand. I felt like I was being attacked for doing nothing wrong. Now, what I'm hearing you say is that if I look at it as from a place of a curious heart and ask curious questions, slow things down and try to understand, and this is what I've been doing as of late, what her kryptonite is, what kryptonite is showing up. And then you start to remember it. And now I don't even have to ask because I see the 6-year-old Leah. I see the 8-year-old Leah that was bullied and abandoned and rejected. And something as simple as going out on a date with full agreement and full consent with somebody new, right? Or spending the night with somebody new is not a frontal lobe situation. I can't necessarily think that I can intellectualize my way through that by just saying, well, we agreed to this. It's a primal reaction. It's an amygdala shutdown. It's very primal. And knowing that where that's rooted creates empathy and compassion for what she's moving through. At this point, without even naming it, I'm already visualizing the girl that was bullied, that was rejected, that was abandoned by multiple people. And I slow down to have empathy in our relationship because I understand that.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, Shai. And that's exactly it. And it's going from the head, why can't you be the way I want you to be? Right? Into the heart of, oh, wow, you're hurting right now. You're scared. You're hurting. And it's about, instead of the focus on wanting them to be the way we want them to be, the focus being on what they're experiencing. And that's, again, a big part of what we'll be working on. And this is what I learned from Marshall Rosenberg, is that feelings and needs or values are what's always real, right? Your mind can forever intellectualize why somebody should or shouldn't do something or think something. But if they're scared, they're scared. If they're hurting, they're hurting. If their need for care, consideration, kindness, respect isn't being met the way they want, that's not arguable. Doesn't mean you're unkind. It means that they're seeking an experience and they're not having it and they're scared or they're hurting. And we gotta always drop into understanding that and feeling it with them. And then when a person trusts that you're truly feeling them, that's real intimacy.
Mm.
You know? I think a
Yeah.
lot of times in polyamory, people are going for sexual intimacy before establishing the emotional intimacy. And not just in polyamory, just oftentimes even in dating or even in sex, even people that are married. And one person's horny and wants to get into it, and there's not that emotional connection, and the other person's not there. And so emotional intimacy is actually the great aphrodisiac for us all, especially in mature relationship.
Yeah. Feeling safe is foreplay.
Yeah, exactly.
Safety
Exactly.
is foreplay. And we forget that the reason our partner is not into something is because something is going on for them. They are feeling unsafe emotionally in some way in their life. And if you don't clear those issues that they're struggling with, sex, they might be doing it just to put on, to, go along to get along. And then that sex is not really intimate. They're zoning out, they're spacing out. They're not really with you for that experience. And it's interesting that you bring up Marshall Rosenberg's work. I've been fascinated by him for years. I took a bit of a weekend workshop once, and I followed different modalities, and I ended up mixing and matching different modalities. But NVC was truly what inspired my blueprint. And when you're speaking about needs and feelings, I created this acronym called OMEN, OMEN, observations, meanings, emotions, and needs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I sense my partner starting to go into a primal panic or, reptile brain reaction to something, I recognize it and I slow down, and I use my system essentially to create that connection where she truly feels seen.
Yeah.
I do that by asking, oh, what are you seeing, thinking, feeling, and needing right now? In other words, what are your observations, meanings, emotions, and needs? And I slow it down and I ask questions that extract a full expression of what they're seeing, thinking, feeling, and needing. And I mirror it back step by step. Oh, so you're seeing that I came home this morning and that I didn't call you last night the way we agreed to. I see. And your meaning is that I was caught up in infatuation with somebody new. I can see that. Okay. And you're feeling you were feeling abandoned, and you're feeling abandoned right now, right? So your need for emotional safety, respect, connection was not getting met, was it? And they'll respond. And you start to see like a visceral change in their face and their body when you do that. And then what I'll do is I'll double down on it, and I'll say something along the lines of, I can totally see how you felt unsafe emotionally. I can totally see with that information that you've shared with me that you didn't feel respected or connected in that moment. And I love you, and I don't want you to feel that. I don't want you to feel unsafe and unseen and unloved. And more I start to see this incredible visceral reaction in my partner. And then I triple down on it and I say, can I hold you? And can we just breathe into the possibility that we can get your needs met, that you can feel safe and seen and loved? And then we hold. And at that moment, I know that I've shifted from reptile brain to frontal cortex, right? And then the discussion starts to operate from up here instead of back there. And you can have but what I find a lot of people are missing is that all of that. They're missing all of that. They're just wanting to figure, they're having a frontal cortex talking to a reptile brain and wondering what's wrong. Why it doesn't make any sense. Why it's, what's the saying? If it's historical, if it's hysterical, it's probably historical.
Right. Well,
Right?
yeah, and the psychological term is re-stimulated, and again, that happens all the time. As a coach, my job is to bring people back to center, and only have them talk about the hard stuff when they both are centered. How do we
Mm-hmm.
get someone back to center? Is by giving empathy.
Yeah.
Tammy, who's in our Zoom room and is awesome, we love Tammy, writes, it's hard to be present if you aren't feeling safe. If you have old reels playing, you tap experience so that you are ready to respond instead of responding with romance, joy, or listening. So again, going back to reacting. And Ray Ray is asking about feelings and emotions, different ways to check in on your partner. The best bet is, first off, is your partner an extrovert or an introvert? If it's someone who is harder to come up with words, then ask if you can guess. Hey, can I guess what you might be feeling? Can I guess what you might be needing? You never say you are needing this, you are feeling this, because that's self-righteous. But hey, Shy, can I guess what might be going on for you? If your partner is more, words come easily, they're more extroverted, then just ask them, what are you feeling? What are you needing right now, babe? What are you
Yeah.
longing for? I like to use the word longing because it's rich. What are you longing for? Marshall primarily used the word needs, and needs is a good word, but for some people they associate it with being needy. And if
Mm,
people were ever told, you're just too needy, right? I can't be in relationship with you, you're too needy. And then we
yeah.
decided, okay, well, I'll never be needy again. So you can replace the word needs with desires, longings, values. Kind of depends on the person and the situation. But
Mm,
it's like those are the things that are driving us at all times. And one of the things that I'll be providing on Saturday and that I provide for all my classes is a number of worksheets, including a list of all the primary emotions and real feelings that we have in life. The primary universal human needs, there's about 50. And then we're going to go through when we make an evaluation or judgment, but we think it's a feeling. I'm feeling screwed by you. I'm feeling manipulated by you. I'm feeling taken advantage of by you. Well, actually, none of those are feelings. They are judgments, they're evaluations, they're victim words. Now, there are painful feelings with that. If I'm feeling taken advantage of by you, it's not a feeling, I'm projecting that you're taking advantage of me. But I am in discomfort. I'm scared. My need for trust isn't being met. My need for safety is being challenged, right? And notice the difference between you're taking advantage of me or I feel taken advantage of by you versus whoa, I'm feeling really scared right now and I'm longing for more trust. See how that's an invitation to connect and to understand me as
yeah.
opposed to an accusation that, could is going to probably put you into reptile brain. And now we've got two raging reptiles going at it. I've got my shark reptile and my dinosaur reptile going at it. So I know you wanted to keep it to a half an hour. Um, and so, are there any final thoughts or questions you want to ask or share, Shai?
No, I'm excited to have you in our workshop. For those of you that are watching this now or later, I dropped in this chat leveleduplove.com/empathy. That's the address to go to the page that describes the workshop that we'll be running. And um, that way you can find it easily. There you
Yeah.
go. Empathy and poly relationships. So the shortcut to get to that address is leveleduplove.com/empathy. So it's an easy address to remember or jot down if you want to join. If you're polycurious, if you're polyamorous, if you're monogamous, there's so many these days. You may have heard this statistic, but 40% of millennials say that they might prefer a non-monogamous relationship. That's a huge statistic. 30% of all American adults say that they would be interested in exploring a non-monogamous relationship. And 5%, supposedly it's probably higher, are actually practicing some form of non-monogamy, whether it's the swinger lifestyle or polyamory or monogamish. So it's certainly becoming a lot more prevalent. We were featured on national TV. Dozens and dozens of polyamorous people have had features on national TV and magazines and so forth. So it's a wave that doesn't seem to be slowing down, especially post pandemic. It seems like a lot of people are starting to question, you know, if what they've been doing in terms of relating, if there's maybe another way that might work for them. And I want to be also, for those of you that are monogamous, I want to make sure I put my disclaimer out there that I don't believe one way is any better than the other. I don't believe that it's polyamory versus monogamy, and I'm some polyevangelist trying to get you to decide. The truth is, it's not about those options. It's about conscious relating. We want to make sure that if you are in a relationship, you're conscious, meaning aware of your partner's needs and your own needs, and that you're able to have conscious conversations where you're not feeling like you're under duress and you can never really truly share whatever those needs are that aren't getting met, whatever those fantasies are that aren't being fulfilled. Being able to have these conscious conversations is what it's about, no matter where you end up, so that everybody ends up, thriving, not just surviving in their relationships.
Beautiful. Just yesterday, Vogue magazine did this story. You can find it in Vogue magazine this month. The More the Merrier is consensual non-monogamy, the new till death do us part. And it's a really interesting article. And that I just saw it yesterday. So if anybody wants more information, again, go to Leveled Up Love, or you can direct message me on Facebook Messenger and I'll send you the links where you can register. And again, I'll show the little poster one last time. It's this Saturday, April 9th, from 10 o'clock till 12 noon Pacific, 1 till 3 Eastern. And thank you, Shai. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. I really appreciate our friends in the Zoom room. And again, lots of love to people on Unify. And if you have more thoughts or questions, I want to read one thing from, this is from DC Reed. The cellular trauma just impacts and exasperates and creates further cellular trauma. Absolutely, that's right. She writes, I'm dealing with ancestral past life trauma. Why does this actually feel so real? Is it because the experiences I've been having are what are causing me the trauma? Or is it the cellular trauma just triggering past experiences? That's a great question. I'm going to tackle it and then we'll sign off. So let's put it this way. None of us know for sure about how past lives work or don't work. But from a scientific point of view, we do know through epigenetics that we carry the cellular memory of the trauma of our ancestors going back multiple generations. And we get that download in our own DNA before we're even born. So we absolutely have the memory of our ancestors' trauma. And then if you want to add to that past life trauma, whether it really is a past life that was historical, a past life that you really lived, or just connecting into the ocean of oneness, right? I'm assuming there's a way of looking at it that all lifetimes are interconnected, that theoretically we can connect to any past life of any person, right? However that all works, the bottom line is when we're feeling it, and I'm guessing that, Mary, you're very empathetic and very sensitive and perhaps in tune with other realms, multidimensional. So the more multidimensional we become, the more sensitive we become, the more tuned into the desire to heal our ancestral lineage, the more likely we are to experience past life trauma that we didn't directly experience ourselves, but it still informs our way of thinking. It informs our decision making, especially from the reptile brain. I like to think that our ancestors, who just were too busy working 3 jobs, crossing the plains, fighting wars, they didn't have the time or the energy or the capacity to deal with the psycho-spiritual patterning. But we do have that freedom. We do have the tools. We have attachment science. We have compassionate communication. We have Rolfing. We have 100 different ways to be in tune with ourselves and to heal deep-rooted trauma. And I truly believe that just as our ancestors paid an incredible price for us to have the freedom that we have today, we pay it back by using that freedom to heal the ancestral lineages. And what's the name of my show that I do every weekend? It's The Awakening World. We are awakening as a species, and each of us as individuals. And part of our awakening is learning how to manage our emotions, learning how to manage our relationships, learning how to create win-win in all of our relationships, whether it's monogamous, friendship, family, or polyamorous. Learning how to care authentically about the other person equal to yourself. Not more, not less. equal. That's a big part of what we'll be talking about on Saturday, is how can we really create equality of care. So I'm really appreciating there's a great chat going on between Ducky and Leora and Tammy in the chat box, so that's cool. Welcome, Cassandra. Glad you joined us. All right, Shai. Well, this was fun. And thanks for hosting me on Saturday. And again, if any of you had questions that I didn't get to, send it to me in a Facebook private message and I will respond to you. And hopefully I'll see you on Saturday at this event that Shai's hosting. And it's interactive, so I'll be able to directly interact. It won't be, this was a Zoom webinar. This is going to be, I assume it's a Zoom meeting, right, Shai?
Yes.
So I'll be able to see people and we'll be able to interact a little bit more easily.
Yes.
Cool.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. I'm going to